Alright man, y'all were hooting and hollering about the gang video. Talking about why this fool ain't mentioned more gangs in the US? Why this and why that? Well, by popular demand, I'm finna tell y'all today. Told y'all not to sleep on me. On top of gangs of the USA, I'm finna tell y'all about some gangs south of the border that had real implications in hoods in the States. Get comfy y'all, this finna be a banger. Alright, so MS-13 ain't just some violent gang from the news. Nah, this gang got one of the wildest origin stories in US history, and the way they spread is basically a case study in how governments accidentally create monsters. They started with Salvadoran refugees coming to LA in the 1980s. Fresh out of civil war where guerrilla fighters and death squads was wilding out daily. These folks came to America with literal war PTSD, trauma layered on trauma, and zero support systems. And when they landed in neighborhoods already dominated by Crips, Bloods, and Mexican crews, they had no protection at all. So they formed tight little cliques for survival, usually centered around heavy metal music, street fights, and watching each other's backs. But here's the twist. These dudes didn't start dangerous. America made them dangerous. When Congress decided to mass deport anybody with even minor charges, they sent these barely organized youngsters back to El Salvador, a country with no police stability, no strong institutions, and no clue how to handle thousands of angry, street-trained LA gang members. The deportations basically turned MS-13 into an international criminal franchise. What was once a few LA cliques became a whole network spread across El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, and every US state with a large Central American population. Inside the US, MS-13 became infamous for extreme brutality, not because they were evil for fun, but because violence became a language members grew up in war zones, then got dropped into gang turf wars, then got dropped into prisons, then got deported to countries where the government couldn't even control the capital city. Violence became communication, reputation, survival, and punishment all wrapped into one. That's why their cases be extra graphic. It's systematic. From 2011 to 2018, the whole DMV was getting pressed by MS-13 like crazy. Maryland and Virginia wasn't dealing with no Lyle wannabes. These was real clickers, moving grimy, moving organized, and moving on command. The feds peeped something wild. These fools wasn't even making their own decisions. They was taking death orders straight from El Salvador, from some dusty prison cell where shot callers got smuggled phones tucked in they socks. The murders all followed the same scripts. Lure somebody to a park, woods, trail, fake pull up, we chillin'. Then boom, whole squad pop out like ninjas and fold dude up over rumors, disrespect, or somebody saying, yo, he might be a snitch. The RICO cases showed the clickers was running, taxing local businesses like homie, pay up or get dealt with, moving lil drug packs just to fund the clique, pressing witnesses, anybody talking gets put on the we gon' handle him list, catching bodies on orders sent from a whole different country. The feds pulled the phone logs and saw messages like, handle that fool, he a problem, make him disappear, sent from El Salvador, not even local. By the time the dust settled, 20 plus members got scooped up in RICO indictments, and the feds basically said, yeah, these ain't neighborhood gangbangers, these dudes running an international murder franchise. Alright, so the Mexican Mafia, or La M, ain't just some prison gang. This the blueprint. The original gangster Ivy League of organized crime inside the California prison system. These dudes didn't start wilding by accident. They came up in the 1950s when young Chicano inmates in Dual Vocational Institution, DVI, got sick of getting pressed by every other group on the yard. White supremacists, black gangs, COs treating them like trash, the whole system stacked against them. So they said, bet, we finna protect our own, and formed a tight militant brotherhood that moved more like a cartel than a crew. But here's the crazy part. La M didn't get powerful inside prison. They got powerful by taking over the outside from inside. They realized every Southside barrio gang was eventually going to send members to prison. And once those members landed on the yard, La M.A. was like, "Welcome to the program. You under us now, homie." That one move, making the streets bow to the prisons, turned them into one of the deadliest criminal organizations in U.S. history. And unlike MS-13, these dudes ain't chaotic or loud. They calm, calculated, business-minded, and scary in that we ain't finna repeat ourselves kind of way. If MS-13 is a wild army, LAIM is the crime board of directors. No emotions, no hesitation, just rules and consequences. Now this one showed the whole system in 4K. The feds exposed La M.A. literally charging rent to entire neighborhoods, like Florencia 13, White Fence, Eastside, Puente, Hawaiian Gardens. All them big name barrios wasn't independent. They was paying tribute like medieval kingdoms under a king. Local gangs would run dealer spots, work corners, or do side hustles, but they owed La M a monthly cut. You refuse? You act funny? You say, "Nah, we good"? La M would greenlight the whole set. Not one dude, the entire neighborhood. There was a real case where a small clique tried to deny payment. 2 weeks later, 3 members were hit, one house got shot up, and the whole crew bent the knee. The feds found the notebooks with names, payments, debts, warnings, straight up mafia accounting, hood spreadsheets, So the Sinaloa Cartel ain't a gang. Nah, this the final boss, the 4K Ultra HD plug, the dudes who make entire governments panic when they blink twice. You ain't dealing with corner hustlers or neighborhood sets. You dealing with a damn multinational crime corporation that got more resources than some countries Sinaloa came up in the late 1980s. Right when Mexico was falling apart from corrupt cops, weak presidents, and cartels getting money like it grew on trees, El Chapo and his crew slid in like, "Aight, homie, we finna run all that." And they did. These fools built tunnels like Minecraft engineers on Adderall. They had planes, trucks, trains, submarines, moving product across borders like it was Amazon Prime but illegal. And the wild part, they wasn't doing it loud or sloppy. They was running that shit like an LLC with HR, logistics, customer service, IT support, and a whole R&D department for new smuggling methods. When Sinaloa touched the US, they didn't tag walls or recruit high schoolers. Nah, they played the wholesale game, that top shelf plug energy. They had ops in Chicago, LA, Phoenix, Atlanta, Dallas, and New York, whole country looking like one big Walmart distribution map. They wasn't trying to run blocks, they was trying to run supply chains. When the feds finally got El Chapo, they pulled out evidence that had the whole courtroom looking like, "Ayo, how is this man still alive?" They had recordings of Chapo calling shots from secret phones, his side chicks delivering messages like cartel UPS drivers, ledger books showing millions moving like loose change, witnesses talking about him flying product in by private plane, even stories of him escaping tunnels like it's Fast and Furious 12. But the craziest part was learning how deep the US side of the operation went. Chapo had dudes in Chicago acting like warehouse managers. Atlanta had stash houses with enough bricks to build a neighborhood. Phoenix had tunnels coming up in basements like surprise DLC packs. This was organized crime on big business settings, First off, you think I slept on the Crips cause I ain't mentioned them till now? Nah, I just like the blue side getting amped, tapping they screen like, "Ayo, where our part at? Relax, we here." The Crips ain't just a gang, they a whole culture, a whole nation that been shaping the West since the 60s. Raymond Washington and Tookie Williams kicked it off in '69 trying to unify South Central youth. But the hood did what the hood always do. Took a good idea and turned it into something way bigger, way louder, and way more dangerous. Sets started popping up everywhere. Rolling 60s, 8 Trey, East Coast, Raymond Avenue, Main Street, Kitchen Crips, Grape Street, and that ain't even the warm-up. Crips multiplied like mixtapes in the 90s. By the 80s, they were worldwide hood celebrities. Blue rags, locks, khakis, all that. Then the crack era hit and every set turned into its own little business. Beefing over corners, clapping at each other, and battling Bloods who rose up in response. But instead of dying out, Crips spread. Folks moving from LA planted sets across Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, the Carolinas, New York. Anywhere in LA, dude landed and said, let me show y'all what the West be on. Some sets got organized, some got chaotic, some stayed small, some turned into full-blown operations. That's the Crips' superpower, range. They travel, adapt, rebuild, and keep the blue flag alive wherever they touch down. The biggest real Crip case was when the feds ran up on the Rollin 60 neighborhood Crips with a whole RICO package. They scooped hella members for murders, dope moves, gunplay, robberies, sex trafficking, and extortion. Basically the whole felony buffet. Wiretaps had dudes talking reckless, coordinating hits and money plays from both the streets, and the pen feds found stash spots, burner phones, dope lines, gun pipelines, straight enterprise activity. That case proved the 60s wasn't no Lyle Block crew. They was moving like a full-blown criminal organization with ranks, roles, and revenue. One of the hardest Crip takedowns the government ever pulled. In November 2024, a 60s member got 28 years on a racketeering case, and in March 2025, the feds unsealed the Big U indictment tied to the same network. Alright, now we gotta talk about the Bloods, because you can't mention the Crips without speaking on the red side. And let me clear this up early. The Bloods ain't pop up first. They popped up because they had to. Back in the early 70s, the Crips was expanding so fast and so wild that smaller neighborhood crews were getting stomped out left and right. Sets that wasn't even beefing with each other suddenly had the same op, and they was like, "Aight, we ain't going outside. We linking up." That's how the Peru Street Boys, Brims, Bishops, Denver Lanes, and other hoods came together and birthed the Blood identity. The Bloods weren't as big at first, but they were tighter, more defensive, more ride or die cause they were literally outnumbered. Rockin' red wasn't fashion back then. It was a statement saying, we ain't scared of blue. And once the crack era hit, the Bloods grew fast, got money fast, and built a name off being more aggressive, more unpredictable, and way less unified than the Crips, which made them dangerous in a whole different way. By the 80s and 90s, Blood sets spread everywhere. Compton, Inglewood, Watts, then out of state to New York, Jersey, the Carolinas, Georgia, even up into the Midwest. Each city built its own flavor, some disciplined, some chaotic, some strictly street, some prison rooted. But the one thing every Blood set shared was that trademark attitude, heavy pressure, heavy retaliation, and heavy loyalty to the red flag. The Bloods grew from a defense squad into a full nationwide movement with history, hierarchy, and a whole lot of beef attached to the name. The biggest real Blood case was when the Fed smashed the 9 Trey gangsters, one of the most active Blood sets on the East Coast. The 2019 RICO hit scoop members for shootings, drug runs, extortion, and racketeering, all tied to a nationwide structure moving orders from prison to the streets. Wiretaps caught 9 Trey homies pressing dealers, greenlighting ops, and taxing neighborhoods. The case blew up huge because a certain rainbow-haired rapper got wrapped in it, and the feds exposed how 9 Trey was running real enterprise moves behind the scenes. Alright, the Latin Kings been outside longer than some of y'all parents. They started in Chicago back in the 1940s when Puerto Rican and Latino kids were getting jumped, profiled, and pushed around by damn near everybody. So they linked up, built a brotherhood, and said, we protecting our own. But the Kings ain't stay small. They got political, they got organized, they got militant, they had constitutions, crowns, ranks, chapters, whole hood royalty vibe. By the 80s and 90s, they spread heavy in Chicago, New York, Jersey, Connecticut, pretty much the whole East Coast. Some chapters tried to go positive, but most were in the streets running dope lines, taxing blocks and crashing out on whoever disrespected the Crown Kings. Got structure, discipline, and old school gang pride that hit different. The biggest real king case hit in 2008 when the feds smashed the almighty Latin king and queen nation in Chicago under Operation Kingbreaker. They scooped over 30 members, including top Crown bosses, for murder, drug conspiracy, and running a whole criminal empire from prison. Wiretaps caught leaders giving royal orders from the pen, telling soldiers who to tax, who to hit, and how to push product. The case exposed the Kings as one of the most organized and structured gangs in the country, not just some street clique. The Aryan Brotherhood, straight up evil business, one of the most violent, cold-blooded prison gangs America ever cooked up. They started in Cali prisons in the 60s when white inmates got tired of getting folded by black and Latino groups, so they formed a whole racist murder squad behind bars. But AB ain't just a bunch of skinheads. They organized like demons with binders, codes, oaths, and body counts. These fools ran murder for hire, extortion, dope pipelines, gambling, and prison politics from Cali yards to the federal system. Once they hit the feds, they linked with Italian mobsters, outlaw bikers, and outside hitters, turning themselves into the white boy cartel of the prison world. They built a whole economy off death, fear, and discipline, keeping power through pure brutality for decades. Their biggest case popped in 2002, when the feds dropped a RICO nuke on the whole brotherhood, indicting 40-plus leaders for murders, murder plots, drug runs, and extortion across damn near every prison system. They tied AB to hits ordered straight out of ADX Florence, the most locked down hellhole in America. The feds exposed these fools sending kill orders through coded letters, sneaky lawyers, and dirty COs like it was Amazon Prime for assassinations, one of the biggest, nastiest prison gang takedowns the government ever pulled. The Black P Stones came out the South Side in the 50s, built by Jeff Fort, a dude so cold he could slide from community leader to street general in the same sentence. No cap. The Stones started as a little neighborhood squad, but leveled up into a whole nation, then morphed again into the El Rockins, moving like a paramilitary army instead of a regular gang. Jeff Fort was finna play both sides, collecting government grant money with one hand while running dope, extortion, and militant discipline with the other. The Stones held big power in Chicago, sliding on GDs and any set that pressed them, and later even spread to LA under the Blood flag. Their mix of politics, street smarts, and straight up soldier structure made them different from any other crew in the game. No cap. Their wildest case hit in 1987 when Jeff Fort and the El Rockin' homies got slammed for trying to link with Libya, like they really finna do terrorism for cash contracts. The feds said Fort was sliding messages to Libyan officials, telling them he could handle attacks on US soil for that bag. No cap, this the only time a US gang leader got tied into foreign ops like a villain in a movie. On top of that, the Stones got hit for murder, dope moves, extortion, and racketeering. If you finna ask what made this case legendary, it's cause no other hood set ever touched international politics on some gang meets foreign government madness. The Hells Angels ain't just loud bikers on Harleys. They a whole outlaw empire, Started in Cali back in '48, they built a rep off rumbling engines, leather cuts, and loyalty so violent you don't even want to ask what happens when someone breaks it. But behind the biker drip is a straight criminal machine tied to guns, meth, extortion, and worldwide beef. Angels don't move sloppy. They run each chapter like a business with bylaws, officers, dues, and punishments that'll make you rethink your life choices. They control whole regions, slide on Mongols, outlaws, and any crew trying to push weight on two wheels. And they global now. Europe, Canada, Australia, South America. No cap, if a country got a highway, the Angels already been sliding on it. One of their biggest cases popped in 2001 when the Feds slid in heavy on the Sonoma County Angels with a full RICO smackdown. 29 members got charged for murder, racketeering, and moving meth like it was Amazon Prime. The Feds tied them to hits on rivals, secret dope labs, and biker wars that had whole highways on high alert. Wiretaps caught Angels ordering assaults, green lighting enemies, and pushing product through clubhouses like it was corporate distribution. No cap. One of the hardest biker gang takedowns the government ever pulled. The Vice Lords came out the west side of Chicago in the 50s, born inside a youth reformatory where a bunch of wild youngins decided they wasn't finna let the system punk them. When they hit the streets, they flipped into one of the coldest, most organized gangs the Midwest ever seen. No cap. They leveled up into the conservative Vice Lords, put on suits, opened stores, and played the "We Positive Now" card. But behind all that clean energy, they was still sliding on ops, taxing blocks, and running dope lines through the west side. The VL split into branches: travelers, unknowns, insanes, each with their own flavor but still rocking that 5-point star. They got political finesse mixed with straight hood pressure, making them one of Chicago's most iconic crews. No cap. Their biggest case hit in 2010 with Operation Trailer Park, when the Feds slid in and scooped 24 traveling Vice Lords for running crack traps, gunplay, and a whole multi-state drug hustle. The investigation exposed stash houses, coded jail calls, and family members moving weight like a generational hustle. Feds said the VLs had a full pipeline pushing coke and heroin through Illinois, Tennessee, and beyond. No cap. The case proved the Vice Lords wasn't just some old Chicago gang. They was a full-blown criminal network with bosses, soldiers, and revenue streams. If you liked what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe. I got a whole lot of knowledge to drop on y'all.